This time from Fireforge we're having a look at their mounted samurai offering. Now these sprues are significantly different from those that we've looked at before because they're covering a different troop type, so mounted samurai or samurai cavalry if you like in this case. So first things first, we'll look at the sprue on the left hand side. So this sprue comprises of the heads, the torsos, the arms and weapon options, and that is it actually as far as I can see. Oh no, they've got the additional swords on there as well that you can outfit them with. So this is primarily the rider, as it were, and the lower half of the body is on the other sprue, and you can see there's quite a diverse range of options for the samurai here. I have got a grand total of 3 that I can build using the number of horses, but actually there are 6 torsos on here, which is quite generous if this is how they normally come paired. In addition, with the ability to give them a total variety of weapons, so they could be mounted archers, they could just have swords, katana drawn, they've got mounted yari as well. That one's become a little bit bent in transmission, but that's okay. That can be fixed or just not used. And those are your different weapon options in different poses as well, and then a variety of different heads as well, which as far as I can see do bear quite a lot of similarity to those found on the samurai sprue, but some of them do look slightly different actually, so there's a little bit of variety there. And I would guess actually you could mix the torsos and heads and potentially some of the weapon arms and so on from this set with the dismounted equivalents, which should give you some level of customization. But don't quote me on how easy that is to do yet. I haven't necessarily tried it myself, but on first look, I think it looks very possible. It might just be, however, that some of the poses with weapons have been tailored to fit on a mounted samurai more easily than it might look on a dismounted samurai, so you could end up with some awkward poses. But here is some of the variety of torsos and heads. Have a look at them up close. So there you go. And then the other important half of the sprue, and this is the horse set of the sprue. Now, as I say, there's quite a lot of arms and bodies and weapons on this side, but only actually 3 horses on this side. So perhaps, if in the future, as I said in another video, the sprues could be bought more individually when more of them are in circulation, it might be possible to get another sprue with the horses and legs and so on, and therefore make this sprue go further, given how many bodies and arms you've got on there. You could build more riders if you could acquire more horses. Something to think about once there are more sprues in circulation. But we've got some quite nicely detailed horses here which go together in 2 halves and then with a head, which if you're familiar with any of the Perry miniatures figures or any of the videos I've done, is a very similar configuration. Then you've got the legs for the riders, which are in 2 halves, which you can see here, which fit together, and there's quite sort of distinct large Japanese style stirrups. You've got sashimono that you can put on their backs as well if you so desire. You've got some additional heads, and then these very unique and distinguishing features for a Japanese mounted samurai of the time. You've got these, what people say, giant inflatable bags, the horo, which here are shown inflated, as the samurai are clearly in dynamic action, and thus the bags are full of air. I personally might put it on one mounted figure in the future to distinguish a messenger or something else like that, but generally speaking I don't know how much of a fan I am of them, and I'm not knocking or necessarily getting into this sort of validity and historicity of them necessarily. I just think they look a bit sort of ungainly. They're very characterful and, you know, period flavoured, so as I say, I might use 1 or 2 in the future, but for now these 3, when I build them later on in this video, I probably won't use them. But that's what they are anyway, and they've got some additional heads next to them as well. There's the set of legs, there's the stirrup holding hands for the figures, so that might be a limitation in using the other sprue, in that if you have one-handed weapons you'd be limited by the number of stirrup holding hands on this sprue, but quite a lot of the weapons on this sprue here are modelled with 2 hands. I think what the limitation will be is if you give them a single-handed weapon like a katana whilst they're mounted, you'll need to use this one. But if you use bow hands or perhaps this Yari, for example, has got a two-handed grip. This one does not. You will then be able to save one of those arms. So just something to bear in mind in terms of the number of poses, if, as I said earlier, you might be able to get hold of another horse sprue in the future, is that you might just be a little bit of constrained there. And that's something I've just noticed as I'm going through, so apologies that I may have sort of built up an idea and then immediately shot it down. Anyway, so there we go. That's a nice looking set of sprues, actually. I'm quite excited to put this one together. Quite evocative looking again. As I said in one of the other videos about the samurai warriors, I'm not necessarily completely up on the historical authenticity of some of this, but to my mind, just based on those I've looked at and the ones I've put together already, I really like the aesthetic that they create. They look very dynamic and very good for what I think they're trying to represent, and certainly from my point of view, they look, you know, authentic in inverted commas enough as it is. So there you go, that is a little look around all the different parts on the sprues, and I look forward to putting some of these together and showing them off shortly. So here we go, the completed samurai cavalry or mounted samurai figures from Fireforge. I've constructed all three and I've given them different weapons and poses in order to give us a sense of the different variety you get. What I have done is mount them on the plastic oval or pill-shaped bases that came with the set. I do have other shaped MDF bases that I've used in the past for other plastic cavalry, but I seem to have run out of them, and I was impatient and want to get these based up, and I don't dislike the shape of these particular bases, so I've used them anyway. As you can see, I've given one mounted there a katana in a nicely charging pose, one thrusting forward with a yari, and another firing a bow from horseback as well. It's quite a nice range of different dynamic poses. The horses go together in two halves, as you saw on the sprue, with a head and a tail, and the figures are two parts for the legs, a torso, two arms, a head, and then this spare additional bits like additional swords, sashimono, quiver of arrows, things like that. And they come out pretty nicely, really. You sort of have to, like all of these things, have a little dry fit, I think, or a little test run to see what looks dynamic and what you enjoy. I always find that, for example, in these, the heads aren't straight ahead, there's slight tilts or slight cants of the head to give a different sense of movement or dynamism to the pose. And yeah, I really like them. I do like the way they've come out and the way that they look, definitely. What I will also say is that a bonus was that you get 6 torsos on the sprue, which meant that I could take the 3 torsos I didn't use on this set and combine them with the spare legs and weapons from these other samurai sets to create a few more foot soldiers, which was great. So that is worth knowing, that you don't necessarily need to have, like the other infantry sprues, a whole nother particular sprue as I described in another video. You can take the spare torsos from this and then immediately create yourself some other dismounted figures, which is great and worth knowing, because then those other bits you've got from the sets can be put to use straight away rather than disappearing into the bits box or whatever else might happen to them. But yeah, very nice. Very pleased with them. It's a shame there are only 3. Maybe I'll get some more, make half a dozen, and experiment with some other poses as well. I think the sashimono kind of helps to give them a bit of height and sense of movement, actually. So whilst I didn't give one to the mounted Yari figure, I might retrospectively put one on. But you can see they fit together very nicely. Same good quality as the rest of the figures. Nicely moulded and sculpted detail that I'm quite interested in painting up, because I think it'll help the painting, actually, which is always a good design feature if you can do something to help complement the painting process with the way the details are, moulded and so on. But very nice indeed, and I absolutely would recommend them. The only thing I will say is there's small contact points between the hooves of the horses. You're going to have to super glue these down. You could use plastic glue. I chose to use super glue because it's a much more instant bond and a bit firmer. But once they're down, he's on there, that's not flexing, so they're quite secure. So that concludes the current range of videos I have for the Fireforge Samurai. Sorry, I'm getting lost in admiring the sculpts themselves. I may do another for the Ashigara shooters in the future, but otherwise you've seen all the main bits of the kits already. The Ashigara shooters is really the Ashigara warriors again with alternative weapons. It's the same basic body sprue. But yeah, I highly recommend them. I think they're quite good value for money in the current climate. They're very nice in the way they've been designed. And I look forward to painting them up when I find a few hundred spare hours. Anyway, in the meantime, happy hobbying.